In this class today, I'm going to talk to you about how to help children feel safe to speak up and share. Can you think of a time when you were part of a group or attended an event where you didn't feel comfortable speaking up or participating? Maybe you were at a dinner party or a social gathering, kind of clutching your drink, feeling awkward. Maybe it was a workshop or some kind of a professional event where you felt uncomfortable speaking up. Maybe it was Thanksgiving dinner with your in laws and you felt awkward. Everyone can think of a time when you didn't really feel safe in the environment to speak up and share. And so we're going to talk about how that can be detrimental for learners, whether it's students in a classroom or just members of a family, how it can thwart progress in the community. And then some concrete things you can do as the leader in that community to help the participants feel safe enough to speak up and share. In 2017, in February of 2017, I was leading a blended learning live workshop in collaboration with Team Digital, which is the professional learning organization for the state of Arkansas. And we were meeting in this beautiful state of the art facility called the Robinson Center in Little Rock. And outside of the Robinson Center, they were building this bridge, a huge bridge that connected Little Rock with North Little Rock. And it was a bridge to get people across the Arkansas River. The Arkansas River eventually flows into the Mississippi River. And it was almost distracting during the workshop because there was such a huge construction project going outside beyond the workshop and the big glass windows that we were facing during the workshop. We were really just uh, distracted almost by this big construction project. Anyway, one of the things that we usually do during the blended learning live workshop is the teams that are attending do a group project where they summarize their ideas on big 25 by 30-inch poster paper and display it around the room, and we do a gallery walk. And I noticed as I was walking around watching the teams prepare for their gallery walk that in one corner of the room, one of the teams was really struggling with how do they help children whose families aren't really supportive of them in their educational journey, even aren't even sending them to school. And they were talking about how in some parts of rural Arkansas, this is a big problem that children aren't even attending school. It's really just not a focus for the family. And then across the room on the other side, there I happened to come across another team that was dealing with that very same issue. And I realized that those big pieces of poster paper that they were preparing their group project on weren't really conducive for cross-pollinating ideas across this big room, that they weren't working together and they were solving a similar problem but weren't collaborating together. And so for the next workshop, I disposed of those poster papers and instead we used Google Slides, and we just shared a Google slide file with all of the participants, and each team was asked to add insert a new slide into the Google slide file, digital file, and then list their ideas right there in the Google slide. And then anyone who wanted to could just thumb through the other slides in that deck and see what other people were working on. And so it was a way for them to be more collaborative while they were creating. And then eventually we went to a hybrid version where they could use the poster paper or Google Slides depending on what they preferred. And it was really interesting to see that some teams flourished with one format versus another, and adding the Google slide option gave voice to people who otherwise might not have participated very much or who needed it to be able to see ideas from other participants in the room. So I learned a lot as a teacher in that moment by giving them that opportunity to collaborate. And I thought at the end of that workshop how symbolic it was that this huge bridge across the Arkansas River was being constructed right in this workshop where I had that epiphany. And I felt like it was emblematic of the fact that learners need bridges to help them communicate, to help them collaborate, to help them get across the other side. And just like this big bridge across the Arkansas River, those Google Slides became a vehicle for my learners to be able to communicate and collaborate more effectively. So, how do we create those kinds of safe spaces for our learners to be able to communicate and collaborate and feel like they have voice that they can share. So, we're going to talk about three bridges today that can help you as a teacher bridge students into the conversation, bridge your learners, whether they're small or old, into the conversation. The first bridge is digital tools. In one of the more extreme cases, we've seen digital tools used to help people with mobility challenges like paralysis be able to communicate. So one example is the sip and puff system. If you've ever seen the sip and puff system, it's almost like a straw, but it's a joystick that people with paralysis can use to control a computer, a device. And so they put the joystick in their mouth, and then based on whether they sip in or puff out, it controls whether they're right clicking their mouse or left clicking the mouse, and then they can move the joystick with their mouse with their mouth to also control what their device is doing. So that's a really clear way that a digital tool is opening the universe for someone who maybe can't even speak, but could use their mouth enough to control this joystick and create words using their computer. In a similar way, teachers and parents can use digital tools as a bridge to help reluctant participants feel like they can get in on the conversation. This help members of your community start to know each other so that then they feel more connected with each other, and then it helps them feel safer to share. So one example is this app Flipgrid. The market data firm MDR asks nearly 1,000 K-12 teachers every year to name their favorite apps. And this year, there were some new apps that emerged at the top, probably because of remote learning and more teachers trying to find ways to help students collaborate remotely. But one of the apps that is now on the top 10 list, for at least for it was for 2020, is Flipgrid. And Flipgrid is an app where a teacher can give an assignment, and then students can prepare and submit a 30-second to 3-minute video in response to the teacher's assignment. And then the cool thing is that other students can record videos to give feedback and response to the student's video. So I've seen students using this, and I've seen students who might feel uncomfortable or reluctant to type out a written response to the teacher. Recording a video and even getting creative, it really can work well with students who are more of the creative type. Recording a video, and it gives them voice to speak up and then to collaborate with each other and to get to know each other. Other apps that were popular aren't as surprising. Zoom and Google Meet, Screencastify, some of these conferencing apps that teachers have been dependent on this year, but they can help students participate and have voice. Another way for teachers to use digital tools just to give students the opportunity to blog or to share photos. Book Creator is a cool app that allows students to create books using photos and videos that allow them to express themselves. Animoto allows students to create videos more easily. So these are different ways that students who otherwise might be shy about speaking up in just a traditional discussion can find their voice. In a family setting, one thing that we do that helps is we simply have a group text thread. We call it the super stakers. So when I type in super stakers, it goes to all of my children and my spouse, and it's a way for us to communicate with each other. We also try to have a culture of commenting in positive ways on each other's Instagram posts. So those are just some ways that we stay in touch with each other and speak up and feel safe sharing without having a traditional dialogue with each other. So digital tools, they can be powerful bridges. A second bridge is norms. And when I say norms, I mean shared descriptions of how you'll participate in a specific modality. So, for example, if you're about to have a group discussion, ahead of time establishing 6 to 8 norms for that discussion, for how you'll participate in that discussion successfully, can be really powerful. And I think there's two reasons for that. One is that norms help you eliminate some of the negatives. So if you decide, hey, we're going to have a norm that we just don't tease, or we're not going to laugh at another person's expense, or we'll keep our comments concise, or we'll keep our video cameras on, or we won't be disrespectful, we won't interrupt. Any of those types of norms can help people avoid the negative things that might create a feeling of not being inclusive in that group discussion. The second reason I think norms are powerful is simply because they help everyone in the conversation know what success looks like. And I learned this when I was doing a training for 100 professors in Slovenia. And the first training, we didn't have norms before the breakout room. And I found that a lot of people did not participate in the breakout room. They just felt dumb. They were worried that if they participated, they would say something that wouldn't have been a good contribution and they were going to feel dumb. So then the next time we did it, before the breakout rooms, I just said, here are 6 or 7 norms for the breakout rooms. And they were things like be an active participant, keep your camera on, be concise, build off of each other's comments, feel brave about speaking up, those kinds of norms. You're welcome to speak in your native tongue if you prefer not to speak in English, and just specified those norms. And the participation rate shot up. And I was so interested in that. And I realized that the reason they were speaking up is just because they knew what I was looking for. And so they felt more confident. So norms can be a great way of helping learners know what success looks like, and that gives them the confidence then to participate in ways where they know that they will feel successful if they participate. So norms are a great bridge. If you have time, co-create the norms with your community. So certainly if you're going to be doing group discussions all semester, it makes sense up front to spend some time co-creating norms. If you're going to be doing a group project for the full session, spend some time up front co-creating the norms so that everyone knows what successful participation looks like in that collaborative project. If it's a one and done, say you're leading a 1-hour webinar and you'll use breakout rooms, you might not really want to take the time as a group to co-create norms. So in that case, I would recommend that as the instructor, you just present the group with the norms. But even when I'm just teaching a simple 30-minute webinar and we have a breakout room, I try to quickly just display in a slide a few norms so that people know what a successful comment would look like. And it gives them a sense, especially the one that I really love is build off of each other's comments and use a sentence stem like I agree with, or I disagree with, or building off of so-and-so. And giving people those sentence stems often just gives them a way to participate where then they feel more comfortable speaking up. So norms are a really great bridge for encouraging a feeling of safety in the conversation so people are more willing to participate. I'm going to now show you a video of Miss Kaylee, who is kicking off a group discussion as part of the morning launch for her blended learning arc, which I will talk about in future classes if you haven't learned about it already in my previous podcasts and materials at Ready to Blend. But you'll see how she introduces some norms, actually norms that she co-created with her class previously. She revisits those norms at the start of this group discussion so that the participants in this Zoom discussion are reminded of what successful contribution looks like. So let's watch Miss Kaylee.
Hi, everyone. We are going to talk a little bit about persistence this morning before you get into your work sprint. And before we do that, I just want to go over our discussion norms really quickly, the ones that you all established at the beginning of the year. I know they're all important and you've had a lot of practice with them and you're great at them, but we are constantly trying to improve. And in order to really work on them, we want to choose just one to focus on in our discussion today. So I'll read them to you real fast. Provide evidence and reasoning. Listen with an open mind and consider new evidence. Take a stand. Don't be in the middle. Listen carefully. Don't interrupt. Do not distract. And be concise. Is there one that somebody feels strongly about focusing on today? Reagan?
I think the one that we should focus on today is the listening carefully and not distracting.
All right. Does anyone have another vote?
I think we can also take a stand since we might have different opinions.
Okay, so between listening and not interrupting and taking a stand, we have to choose. So if you want to focus on listening today, let's see that. And if you want to focus on taking a stand. Okay, we'll do take a stand another day. And still, please do take a stand. You must. But we will focus on really listening carefully today and not interrupting as we go through our discussion. All right, so the depth.
As a quick note, norms can be very helpful in a family setting as well. So having a few ideas for what a successful dinner conversation would look like, for example, the one that I find is just, well, growing up, the one that we used was no chanting. I came from a family with 7 children, and yeah, my parents found like the no chanting rule was very important for whatever reason. And then the one that I feel like in our family helps the most is just don't don't make jokes at other people's expense. That seems to be the one that keeps people feeling the most like part of the community in a happy way. Okay, the third bridge that I want to teach you about is as you're designing your content, your learning content, build off of your students' interests. So we're going to watch now in the same video of Miss Kaylee how she builds off of her students' interests as she introduces this discussion about persistence. So you'll see that she first asks a question around what who are my dog lovers? Who are my cat lovers? Who's a nature lover? And she shows these pictures to go along with it to just help engage those learners that love pets. And then she asks them for examples from their own life. So you'll hear Vanessa talking about gymnastics and Reagan talking about basketball. She spends a full like 5 minutes of this group discussion, building off of her learners' interests before she turns the discussion for the next 6 minutes and concludes with a conversation around persistence and how the students will show up with persistence for their group, for the collaborative project that they're about to do after this morning launch. So she really spends almost 50% of this discussion building off of her learners' interests before she turns and plants the idea of persistence, which is the mindset skill that is her intention for this as the takeaway for her group discussion. Watch how Ms. Kaylee does it in this clip.
Definition of persistence is continuing a behavior in spite of opposition, obstacles, or discouragement. So who are my cat lovers? All right, here's one for you. All right, dog lovers. And how about nature lovers? All right, now that we've seen a few examples from animals and trees, how about some examples from your own lives? Does anyone have an example of persistence from their own lives that they'd be willing to share? Vanessa?
Well, my passion is gymnastics, so I'm very committed into it. So I like going through, well, in gymnastics, you go through obstacle courses to like get into a new skill. So I'm very persistent about gymnastics.
All right, you literally have to continue in the face of obstacles.
Yeah.
Awesome. Reagan?
I'd love to piggyback on what Vanessa was saying. I also love basketball, so I'm very persistent in that sport. So I have to practice every day, and like even one day of missing practice can definitely affect your like skill level the next day. So you have to have persistence when you're doing that sport.
Awesome. Does anyone have an example of a time where you chose not to persist? Where you actually decided right now, I think I should give up? Yeah. Ty?
A time where I decided not to persist was when I started trying to play this instrument that I didn't really like, but I decided to try it out because I might like it. I started playing it and I ended up hating it. My stubby little fingers were too small. So, yeah.
Thank you. So I'd like you each to think about something right now in your life where you want to improve. Something, you have a goal, you maybe are good at it but want to be better, or you're not good at it yet, and you want to be, and you know it is going to take persistence. So think about something, and I'd love each of you actually to share. And let's go ahead and have Vanessa start, and then Vanessa, you can call on someone. If you're ready after Vanessa's done speaking, you can raise your hand, and she'll call on you.
So I've now like started playing the ukulele, and I'm not that good yet, but I'm very persistent now. I'm like practicing, and hopefully I get better. So I'm very excited about that, and I love playing the ukulele. It's my new passion.
Well, I hope we get to hear that someday.
Yeah. Can I call on Zane?
Yeah, so I am not good at time management, okay? So for me to fix that, I put timers, and now whenever I'm doing something and the timer goes off, I switch to some other subject for school.
So, your bonus assignment for this week's class is to use the survey of safety and sharing that I have included in the online class notes with this episode. And you can use this survey with the members of your community, whether it's your students or your family members, to diagnose how well you're building that community and helping everyone to feel safe in sharing. So the survey will just ask them whether or not you're creating norms and giving opportunities for people to express themselves digitally and tying the discussion to participants' interests. And you can just use this survey ahead of time and then maybe check again in a month and see whether or not you're creating that kind of a culture in your community where everyone feels safe speaking up and sharing. No one should go one day feeling unnoticed. Children and teenagers have ideas that can change the world. Help them find their voice. Create spaces where they can practice sharing their voice. Bring them into the conversation. I hope that our time together has given you ideas that will help you lead the way. If you benefited from listening, would you please leave a review in iTunes from your phone by opening the Apple Podcast app, searching for the Ready to Blend podcast, tapping on the album art, and then scrolling all the way to the bottom to the purple text that says write a review. Thank you for taking the time to leave a review, and more importantly, may you feel encouraged and emboldened as you move forward to be a force for good in the lives of learners.